Nice one, Cyril.
Welcome to Nice One, Cyril Extra Time. I'm here as ever with Kevin Acott. Morning, Kev.
Morning.
So we got a lot to get through today. Why don't we start at with the most obvious topic? We've bought someone, and he's quite good. Conor Gallagher, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm really pleased, basically. There's going to be a few yes buts, obviously, coming up. But my first response was I was really pleased because he's one that when you're just sort of half watching football. I mostly half watch football, including Tottenham now. And even when I'm there, I'm half watching. And certain players stand out. And he was actually with Palace because he was on loan at Palace, wasn't he? And I watched a couple of matches and he stood out. He stood out for his sort of dynamism and his energy and just being all over the pitch and all over whoever the opposition were. And I've always sort of liked him since then, since accidentally sort of seeing him really. And he's not everything we need, but he's definitely part of an improvement, a necessary improvement in midfield. So, yeah, please.
I totally agree with that. I remember, again, he came to my attention, I guess, watching Palace, half watching Palace, in the same way as you did. But he did stand out, and I remember thinking, oh, wouldn't mind having that kid. Who is he? And then learning that he was a loanee from Chelsea and thinking, oh, well, forget that one. Circuitously, he's come to us, and I agree. He's a guy we know he's got the good engine, but he's a tackler. He's okay on the ball. For Palace, he actually scored quite a lot of goals, which he didn't do subsequently for Chelsea or for Atletico. But then I think he might have been used in a different way. Didn't they call him the pitbull in Atletico? All about his tackling and his graft. But I think he's a bit more sophisticated than that.
He is. I've seen a couple of sort of clips or series of clips of goals he's scored, and he's certainly capable of actually shooting from range.
Yeah, that'll be discouraged straight away. It's okay to let them in from range, but we don't want to be scoring from range.
Indeed.
So it is a good buy. The other thing that's quite interesting is that this seems to have been, the deal was done, in a kind of a fairly painless way. Apparently we were in for him alongside Villa and we blew them out of the water with a better offer. I don't know whether this signals a refreshing change of approach or whether it just happened this way.
Really hard to know, isn't it? And I think the test of any new approach will be if we sign anyone else before the end of the month, really. My fear is they're hoping this will be enough to the Irish word, plumose the fans, and I would be so disappointed if he's the only buy in January. Yeah. We all know we need a lot more. So we'll have to wait and see.
We have bought a guy called Sousa, who none of us know anything about, but it looks like from the YouTube compilation, he looks a useful left-sided defender who can get forward, and I would be surprised if he is going to be the go-to backup for whoever's playing at left-back in the short term. But it'll be interesting to see what he's got. And he's only played about 40 senior games, so it's not as though we're crying out for players with some proper experience. Gallagher absolutely ticks that box. There's talk about a number of other players, some probably more likely than others. There's a guy called Karim Adeyemi, who's a sort of a Kudus-like winger playing in Germany at the moment. Akliouche, who plays for, is it Monaco? Who looks like a more lightweight version of Kudus. Then there's Ndiaye from Everton. I can't see that happening. And the other thing of interest, of course, people are talking about the fact that Alonso has left Real Madrid. And, of course, we jumped on that. And, get him in. That's also not happening.
Why would you throw away a sort of a lifetime, a career of achievement and respect and come to us and just blow everything and end up being hated by everyone?
I think of those people I mentioned, Akliouche is the one that keeps rising to the top of Gary of Harlow's charts. And he does look a nice player, but I'm not convinced that that's who we need right now, particularly given that Tell has started to really show something.
Yeah. It still feels for me we need a number 9, as they used to be.
Yeah.
We need a goal-scoring centre-ish forward. And without that, even if Richarlison was fit, we know he's not that person that we need up there. And that, to me, is what we need. I think we can just about cover the defence. Even if there are injuries, we can just about cover the wings if there are injuries, and maybe even the midfield with people starting, hopefully, to come back. Solanke isn't that player either. Solanke will play with that player if we buy that player, that number 9.
Yeah. Hard to find, aren't they? And it's sort of galling watching Harry Kane scoring every match from insane angles and spreading, 90-yard passes straight to the foot of the guy who's running. And it's a reminder of how good he is. I would say you don't miss them till they're gone, because we knew what a great player he was. But the gap he's left, and to a slightly lesser extent, Sonny, it's massive. And so you have to factor that into how Ange was able to perform and how Frank has been able to perform, because you can't replace that quality. It's just not possible.
No, you can't. But we need someone who's a guaranteed, whatever, 15, 20, 25, goals a year person who stays fit to play up there. It would be lovely to find another Kane. We're not going to. It's very unlikely. No one's going to, really. But someone good, someone more Kane-like than Richarlison-like.
Yeah. There's some talk about Tony, isn't there, coming back from Saudi Arabia and filling in, and Frank knows him. Can't see that happening either, frankly. But as ever with Spurs, it's all guesswork. My favourite Gary of Harlow this week has been this one. Tottenham are making discreet inquiries into the signing of Crystal Palace ace Adam Wharton. Discreet inquiries. Gary has got his finger on the pulse. Let's have another look, shall we, at something else that's been going on in the background. So these are some appointees, recent appointees. We've got Carlos Rafael Merson. He's coming in as Director of Football Operations, which is a newly created role. We've got Dan Lewindon coming in as Performance Director, and we've now taken Johnny Heitinger on board as Assistant First Team Coach, replacing Matt Wells. Now, I usually couldn't give a fuck about any of this stuff, but it does look a lot like window dressing, a lot like creating posts, a lot like, here's your scaffold. What about the building?
Yeah, I don't care about any of those unless we see obvious results, and that seems very unlikely. As a result of those 3 appointments, I can't see things changing. I thought someone on Twitter said recent Tottenham tweets have seemed like they've been written by candidates on The Apprentice, and they go into this sort of business speak, corporate speak, the Director of Football Operations. What is that? I don't know. It's another board member. It's another suit. And having worked in the NHS and universities for most of my life, it's hard not to be cynical about people with new titles, and just so much window dressing, really.
They do seem like sinecures, some of these jobs. And there's also, don't forget, we've got Langer, who's the Director of Sporting Operations. Director of Sporting Operations. So we've got a Director of Football Operations, a Director of Sporting Operations. We've got a Performance Director. What does it all mean? It's such a load of shit. It's hard to discern any kind of joined up thinking about this. And maybe we'll be enlightened at some point. And when we win the league, they'll say, well, that's because we had a Director of Football Operations, a Director of Sporting Operations, and a Performance Director in place. Anyway, moving on from there, here's a thing that's been kind of popping up time and time again. I guess in the light of Thomas Frank's struggles, people still talking about Ange, to the extent that some of them are saying, bring him back. Now, this seems like the most pointless, vacuous bit of twaddle. But why are people still obsessed? He won us a trophy. That's really, that's as far as it goes. But weren't we just faltering to the point of almost being relegation fodder? And that's the reality of Ange.
Yeah, my daughter was someone who felt very, very strongly that we shouldn't have got rid of him in the first place, and would be happy if he came back. Her view is that there was potential there that we're not seeing in Frank. That were the injury situation sorted out, we do have a better squad than that Ange had to sort of struggle with. He was a livelier, more engaging sort of character as well. It seemed like the squad sort of responded to him in a way they don't to Frank. And I can sort of see all those arguments on a low level. I have not a single part of me thinks that would be a good idea for him to come back. It's not going to work. We need to just sort of bite the bullet and give Frank at least the rest of the season, or find someone else. But right now, I don't think that makes sense. We have to wait till the end of the season. And Ange is not the right person. He clearly wasn't for Forest. Mind you, I'm not sure who would be, given who you have to deal with as a manager. But no, it's not. It's not Ange. One of the things I just want to say, so I'm sorry, because I've been thinking about this whole thing about basically giving up on the league and focusing on the Cups, and it worked. I have never heard anyone else say that for any other team ever, that's what they were doing. Now, and it may have happened, but I'm not sure it's ever happened quite as obviously and explicitly as it did with us. And that worries me. That's not good management to actually say that. We're going to give up on this part of the job. We're just going to focus on that one. Of course, there's always those adjustments being made in the squad, and sort of, bringing sort of young players on in the Carabao Cup matches or whatever. That's okay. But this very, very obvious, no, we're just going to focus on the Europa League. That's a sign of real weakness.
I didn't actually buy that either. It just seemed to me to be a kind of post hoc explanation for we won the Europa League, therefore, doing fuck all in the Premier League was justified, and that was the approach we took. But it seemed to me that if we had given up on the league, we decided we'd done enough not to get relegated. Imagine a club like Spurs, we've done enough not to get relegated, and therefore we're going to throw the entire pot on red at the roulette table. And what if we hadn't won the Europa League? Can you imagine? I mean, that is a season of such drastic, abysmal failure. The likes even most of us haven't seen. I mean, we got relegated in 76 or something, but it would have been rare to have a season of such underachievement. So I don't buy that. I think Ange had a lot to deal with, a lot of injuries. He did pretty well when he first came in. Ange's issue was hubris. I think he had this way of playing, and there was going to be no compromise. And he was found out. You can't do that in the Premier League and expect not to be found out. And he wouldn't adapt. Whereas oddly, in the Europa League, we did adapt. We seemed to embrace a style that got us through, which begs the question, why the fuck didn't we do that a bit more in the league? Why were we not a bit more watertight in the league? Why didn't we? I mean, that's constant losing at home and away, of course, but it was so dispiriting. And for all the joy and relief of winning the Europa League, it was a horrible, horrible season.
Yeah.
I tell you what, the other thing a lot of Garys of Harlow are doing at the moment is putting their revised Tottenham lineups onto Twitter, right? So inclusive of Gallagher. And some of them even will include players that we've never heard of or haven't bought. This is an absolute mugs game, isn't it? What's the point of that?
I don't know. I think it feels like a sort of a young person thing, and they enjoy it. They enjoy doing it. And so my response is just one of condescension and being slightly patronising to them. I think it's sort of okay. It's a bit like the fantasy football thing, isn't it? I think it is pointless. But I do read some of them actually, and I do find myself agreeing or disagreeing with some of them.
So they have a place in the Acott household. So that's interesting.
Yes.
I never read them, but only because, look, this team may never be picked. These players may never be bought. And really, this is just, as you say, that's the ultimate kind of wish list, and pointlessness of it is just I can't handle. All right, look, I tell you what, we're getting towards the end of today's pod. Now, we are playing West Ham tomorrow at finally a 3:00 kickoff on a Saturday, which is quite nice. This has been spoken of as a kind of a crunch, make or break game for Thomas Frank. I don't think that's true anymore.
No.
Because seems to me they've committed to him, and that's just not he's not going to get sacked. But I do think there's a scenario in which if we lose 5-0 at home to this abysmal West Ham team, the demonstrations and the protests are going to get really very loud indeed.
Yeah, and rightly, because we shouldn't basically even be drawing against them. We should win against them. I think you're right. It feels like even just the last week or so, things have shifted to, no, he's safe, even if we draw or narrowly lose. I think where he's still exposed is if we get utterly humiliated, like you say, 4 or 5, then there will be urgent discussions and he might still go. But no, I actually, I'm going to say this out loud. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think we are going to lose or be humiliated.
West Ham are dreadful, but so we have been dreadful. I thought there were, we called our last podcast green shoots or dead roots. I would err on the side of the former. I think there were green shoots there.
Yeah.
I think there was something about so much the quality of play as the approach. We suddenly kind of picked up, and there was a sense of, we're not having this. We're just not going to be this kind of hopelessly inept. We're going to give it everything. And they did for about 25, 30 minutes. And that was exciting for me. Yeah. Whether that is the case tomorrow. And also, the other thing is a possible uplift with Gallagher, getting busy in midfield. He's that mythical leader that we always talk about. He's a bloke that people will take their cue from.
Yeah, I do. And I would hope that our midfield will be more like that 20 minutes, 30 minutes that we had with him. He will give us that energy and that drive forward. He's also, of course, apparently never been injured or missed any game through injury. So we all know where we're going with that one.
All right. Well, look, we're done for today. Thanks, Kevin, for that. Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter at @NiceOneCyrilPod. And you can listen to the pod on all of your favourite platforms. Why not subscribe or follow, all that kind of stuff. And you'll never miss an episode. Thanks for being with us today. And we'll be back with our next show with the full team on Tuesday. And we'll cover all things Spurs. Till then, come on you Spurs.
Nice one, Cyril.